Hello and welcome to The Ferry Glide, a brand new podcast about all things whitewater. And I'm your host, Simon Wyndham, and I'm joined by two special guests today. People in the UK will be familiar with them, but I'll get them to introduce themselves. So I'm joined today by Chris Brain and Matt Brook. So hi, Chris, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi, Simon. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good today. So tell us a bit about yourself, and particularly for people who might not be based in the UK and might not be familiar with you. Who are you? What do you do? And what's your thing?
Well, firstly, I'm a paddler. I love getting out on the water. Whitewater and playboating and freestyle is definitely my origins, my roots, my background. But over the years, turned my hand to a load of different crafts: canoes, paddle boards, all kinds of different types of boating, types of paddling. I'll ever go at anything as long as it floats and I can sit in it, or maybe kneel on it, or nowadays I suppose stand on it. I'll give it a shot as well. I work full time as a paddle sports coach, so that's what I do. I'm teaching a full suite of coaching and courses, everything from like safety and rescue, leadership type stuff to qualifications, and that's what I do full time.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So, Matt, hello to you.
Hello.
And again, for people who are not familiar with you, tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. I think I would also label myself as a kayaker first, a paddler first, and again, a background in freestyle and whitewater. I think probably I can argue that I am a YouTuber. I'm definitely, I think, more a YouTuber than I am a coach in terms of hours. Have been a full-time coach for a few years in the past, but I currently work for the church and I'm studying for a master's, and I don't do any coaching other than voluntarily, and I don't do any paddling other than for enjoyment, and it's great.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so we're going to cover a few topics today, particularly for people who might be suffering from confidence issues and also might not have easy access to white water. So I think we'll start with how to practice productively when you don't have easy access to white water. So, both of you guys will have encountered lots of students who, might not have the luxury of living in a whitewater mecca. So Chris, let's start with you. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, can you progress your whitewater skills if you don't have ready access to whitewater?
Yeah, I think you can. And this resonates quite well with me because where I started, I was really near to a river. So I'd get on moving water when it was flowing, when there was water in it. But also we used to complement that with loads and loads of flat water based practice on a pond just literally next to the river. And I feel like you can get a long way on there on flat water just by being playful, just by messing around and seeing what you can do. And I think it really helps if you've got a handful of friends that are maybe at a similar level or even beyond what you're doing at the moment that can push you, and there can be a bit of healthy encouragement and maybe a bit of competition. And I think you can get a lot doing something like that, just being playful. So if we're thinking freestyle, playboating, that sort of thing, just trying to do moves on both sides, trying to start moves in reverse instead, and trying to do moves with your hands, those sort of things can really, really help. That unstructured play is great. I think when you want to take it to the next level, you probably do need to try and think about putting some kind of structure in there. And it doesn't have to be super strict. It could just be going in with a plan of, I'm going to make sure that if I do something on my right, I'm going to practice it as well on my left. And if I do something forwards, I'm going to try and do a similar sort of move in reverse. So you don't just end up repeating the same thing over and over again. And I think that kind of creative play is really important. And you can actually do loads with that. Once you start thinking in that way, honestly, the possibilities just become only limited by imagination.
Yeah. So no, Matt, you've got quite a few thoughts on this, haven't you? Because I think you've even done videos on this subject as well.
Very definitely. It was my background. I think, you cannot underestimate the determination of a teenager with a boat and legs and water nearby. I grew up on the south coast, and my only nearby water was the sea or a canal. So yeah, absolutely. There is no question that you can, with some determination and the right mindset, you can progress well. I think I would echo what Chris says. Do it with your mates if you can, because that learning community is definitely the best way to ensure that you're not drilling in bad habits, or it's a good safeguard against it. Perhaps is more accurate way of saying that. Having professional coaching would probably also be a good way, but not everyone needs that. Not everyone wants that. And that's fine. But yeah, even as a solo paddler on your own, you can learn if you're of a persuasion where you can watch a video or, look at a technical template and then go out and experiment until you found it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're a big proponent of practicing the sea, aren't you? Because, I've noticed whenever you're going on a big water trip, you tend to take your boat out in the surf and, in some cases get properly mullered, but
well, I mean, I suppose some of that is just is spin, isn't it? I happened to be going out, I lived in Devon for a while and happened to be going out surfing on a very regular basis and filmed some surfing and then went, oh, I'm going to Iceland, so let's present this as me training for Iceland, so that let's not pretend it's anything more than it was. But yes, I'm a big proponent of, making use of what environment you have, and if the environment that you have is big surf, great, get out in it in a playboat, get out in it in a creek boat even, you'll learn a lot.
So Chris, you mentioned the word play and we're going to come on to some freestyle stuff later, and we know not everybody is into getting into the short boats, but there is a lot that people can do with boat control. Although I know I was always a big proponent for like doing drills, and not everybody likes drills. They like a more informal approach to doing things. I mean, what are your kind of suggestions for that?
So I think you've got to do both of those things. So there's definitely space for, I mean, I was saying before about just being playful and just being creative, but you can definitely go, right, well, this is something I need to work on. I've been playful and creative enough and I want to practice that. So you can use loads of drills and keep going with it. I think for me, the key is not just practicing something in isolation on its own, but trying to give it some context. And sometimes that can be really difficult if you've only got access to flat water and you haven't got a wave or a feature to push against and to use. So yeah, you can definitely do drills, and that's absolutely fine, but just making sure you're not just practicing that and you are practicing the variables essentially. That's what I think we need to do as kayakers, as canoeists, as whitewater boaters, like make sure we're pushing ourselves to do a little bit something different every single time. I think the issues that you could have with practice, like doing drills, or even with the creative play, is if you go back and just keep repeating the same moves over and over again. And I see that in my own boat, and I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that at all. Like I could go to a venue that I'm familiar with on the river and end up hitting the same kind of moves regularly, but I still try and make sure that I don't then return back and do the exact same session. Or if I've got my eyes open looking for a different eddy or a different thing to try and do with it. Or, as I said, be creative, throw in a paddle spin, do it backwards instead of forwards. All of that sort of stuff can work, but try and avoid repeating the same stuff over and over again, which can definitely happen if you're just using drills and repetition.
Yeah. I mean, I know one of my first coaches, he often did a virtual eddies thing. So even though it was like on a flat water river, you'd pick a virtual eddy. You might be behind a tree or something, be no flow on it, but you could kind of practice your angles going into it and try, get a feel for like where you need to be. I mean, all that, there's things with regard to like paddle spins and stuff, I think is absolutely, fantastic. I mean, if you are in that situation, I'm going to put my freestyle hat on here because, I am a big proponent of it. When you reach a certain point and you don't have that easy access to white water, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on, say, the flat water freestyle aspect? You're just getting in a low volume boat. It doesn't have to be a short, stumpy boat. It could be an old school playboat, like one of the Prions or something, and just throwing that thing about and being in uncomfortable positions. I mean, how do you think? What do you think?
I'll let Matt answer this, but my short answer is yes, do that. That will be helpful. And I'll let Matt fill in the details.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same. Do not despise the day of small things. It is always, always worth getting out in a boat, irrespective of your environment. And as you say, changing craft, you know, I don't want to say most people, but probably a good percentage of kayakers in the UK nowadays, and probably in the States as well, if not more so in the States, have a quiver. And, you know, the bigger your quiver gets, statistically, the less time you're spending in every single individual boat. And so therefore, deliberately choosing to say, maybe it feels a bit boring, but actually today I'm going to get out in my slalom boat, or I'm going to get out in my creek boat, and I'm just going to go out and do some flat water, do some rolling, do some maneuvers in that craft and dial it in. If you can dial it in on flat water, you will guarantee better results on white water. You know, and likewise, getting in a freestyle boat and flopping about, you will inevitably increase your ability and awareness, particularly, you know, your kind of haptic feedback from the body, and learning how certain things feel, so important. And that will inevitably increase and grow if you give it time to grow.
Yeah.
Even so, just getting a boat full of water and sticking it on an end and letting it pirouette around whilst you balance it is great fun. And that's a real core workout if you sit there for a few minutes doing that sort of thing, which I think is for me is a big deal for a lot of paddlers, is not just working the technical, but working the physical as well. So being a little bit out of breath when you're doing some of this work on flat water and then going straight into the next set or the next drill, actually, not just giving yourself lots of rest and lots of breaks, but trying to practice your physical aspects of it as well.
And that can be built up. You know, one of my favorite things to do, and obviously this is straying ever so slightly because I'm talking in my kind of usual play spot at Wood Mill here in Southampton, the mighty ditch. But I you know, it's a low flow environment, and one of the things I love to do is just build sequentially. So I'll say, right, I'm going to do this move into this move. Nail that. Okay, let's add a third, let's add a fourth, and just sequentially build up like that. And, some of the elements that you're adding in might be just, right, well, I'm going to throw a little paddle toss in the middle of this. I'm going to, move across to that eddy over there. None of the individual elements perhaps are particularly testing, but you start throwing them together and you become out of breath, and suddenly your mind is working a lot harder, your body's working a lot harder, and you're inevitably forcing.
How do you feel about canoe polo? Because I've always wondered whether that would be a great thing to do. I've never been that keen enough to actually have a go at it because, I don't know, I've never been a big fan of, I don't like football, I don't like any of that sort of team sport stuff.
So I've not done much of this, so I can't really comment massively on canoe polo, but the elements of the training and the boat control and the ball handling skills have got to be a good thing, right? They've got to be a good thing. Even though I'm not going down white water with a ball, the ability to be able to balance and control and hold your angles in your edges and change direction has got to be transferable to whitewater. And also thinking creatively again, there's no reason we couldn't be going down whitewater with a ball that we're passing around between a group of friends. I mean, choose the right friends and choose the right whitewater, but yeah, you could.
Yeah, no, I'd second that. Yeah.
Oh, I did see that Boyd Ruppelt posted that he thinks one of the best things ever for practicing in a boat is boat ball.
Yeah, I watched that video and thought, oh, this is quite funny because, he very much claims that it was invented at his canoe club in the States. And I was like, I think we were doing this when I was a kid. Granted, he's maybe 5 or 10 years older than me. So perhaps, boat ball, canoe polo, sans much equipment or rules definitely was something that I did as a teenager in the canoe club that I was involved with then, and hugely beneficial. It's that idea of having a complete distraction from all of the technical elements of the paddling in terms of the ball handling, which means that those things have to become automatic. Your paddling skills have to become automatic when you're handling the ball, which is you're forcing second nature on your paddling skills.
Yeah, and that's an interesting sort of factor with things, and I think that kind of is connected to this idea of overcoming fear and getting confidence. In whitewater, obviously, I guess coaches are one of the main things people are going to come to a coach for is, I want to be more confident. It's every single course that I've ever been on, that's one of the main things that comes up. So all this is kind of interconnected, particularly that idea, as you say, Matt, of allowing your instinct to take over rather than, thinking about every move that you're doing, which is what you do when you're fearful. You don't want to go over, so you're really hyper focused on doing what you think is the right thing. But Chris, I mean, what are you, when it comes to sort of confidence in boating? I know there's not one solution that fits all for any of this, but what are the sort of common things you come across, and how do we approach overcoming?
I think like one of the main things is people being a bit unsure about going over and going upside down, or maybe being worried that going down a certain rapid and hitting a certain feature would make them go over in a place they don't want to be upside down. And that could be totally valid, couldn't it? It could be that they're thinking, well, this rapid, if I go upside down it from the top, then that's going to be really, really bad. And I'd agree with them. That could be awful to do that. So how do you give yourself a guarantee that you can get down there, and that could be a real blocker to you taking on the rapid if that's what you want to do. I think there's no magic secret, I think is the unfortunate answer here, but I think that lots of exposure to that environment and if possible to make it progressive as well, I think is really important. So if we were to rewind this right back to somebody going upside down for the first time, we probably don't take them to a big challenging rapid and throw them down there. I mean, maybe some people might, but we probably do it a little bit on flat water. But then making that progressive and taking it a bit further up into a slightly more challenging environment. They have a swim somewhere and it's okay, but then we maybe give them the opportunity to make it a little bit harder. And I think if we keep doing that right through to wherever this blocker happens, we just need more experience in those spaces. I think the challenge people often have is that where they're worried about going upside down is quite a leap from where they're at right now. So it's working out how do you give them experience in that environment that isn't just a massive jump, but it's just the next little step.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because I did go to a sports psychologist myself, and some really interesting points came up when we were discussing about the idea of confidence and overcoming fear. And there was stuff that I wouldn't have normally associated with this whole idea of fear, because you think of it as being purely about confidence. But there were things like your routine before you went to the river. Are there things that make you on edge? It could be your group faffing around for longer than is needed, or it could be a change of plan. We're not going to go to the river that we were expecting today. We're going to go to a different one. What's this new one going to be like? But also ego. Even if you don't think that your issue is ego, it might actually be rooted in ego, not wanting to look silly. So Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't know if I have anything particularly wise to add here. From a coaching perspective, I think one of the biggest things I think matters is who you paddle with. And as a coach and as a friend on a river, I'm always hoping to be a calming presence and someone who is demonstrating joy in the river environment, because I think joy is a big killer for fear, and calm in the river environment, just to be modeling that steady, unhurried, unflappable presence, I suppose. And then also to be honest, if I am flapped, because I think that's a healthy thing to model as well. Say, look, your fear is reasonable in the environment. There might be a reasonable cause for your fear. But yeah, as I say, I think who you are choosing to paddle with makes a humongous difference.
Yeah. I know it's, if you're I find myself, if I'm with a group that is maybe, I want to say a little bit silly, but they're all kind of geared up to, try silly things, or, if the day seems really serious, and obviously your mindset is going to go serious, or if you're all with just one other person and you don't have confidence in their ability to deal with anything if it goes wrong. But I tend to get on way better and have a way better day if people are just experimenting, playing about, and again, it takes the mind off anything that you're you're thinking about that could be negative. Another thing that that I was told was to treat your, there's the whole thing of the monkey on the shoulder and that kind of thing, but similar kind of thing, to treat your fear as if it was an annoying coworker, or an annoying relative who tells tall stories, and you just go, yeah, go whatever, bye, and you listen to it, but you just sort of put it to the back of your mind. You don't try and shut it down. You don't try and ignore it or pretend it doesn't exist, but you kind of acknowledge it. And like you said, Matt, acknowledging the fact that fear is okay to have. It's not, as you say, it's not unreasonable. We're going into a whitewater environment. It's not a natural environment for human beings to be in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Chris, when you have students like this, I mean, obviously people come to a coach and they might expect a really fast result, hadn't they? So, I mean, what could people expect? If they came to you and they had this kind of problem.
Yeah, this is difficult because I think you, as a coach, I want to think of this as being a long-term thing for this person. It's as I said, there's probably no magic answer where if you have this or you do this, you'll be more confident. I just don't think it works like that. But the problem is, as you said, people want to book a day and get that result and somehow be more confident at the end of it. And there might be some progress. There should be some progress. I think one of the challenges is people are often looking for a technical solution to a confidence problem. So people will usually say, well, if I could roll more reliably, I'll be more confident. Or if I could boof better or break out tighter, I would be more confident. And there probably is a bit of truth in that. My choice of paddling down a rapid is probably connected to whether I think I'll stay upright on it. And if I do go upside down, do I think my roll's going to work? Yes or no? Or, is it going to be pretty reliable? That will definitely have an impact on how I feel and if I feel confident on it. I think in terms of tangible things that we can do and we can do with a coach, totally echo what Matt just said. The right people on the river can have a huge impact, and hopefully the coach, being that calming presence, can just help you enjoy being in the environment in a way which you might not necessarily do normally. There might be more time with a coach. There's probably an element of maybe a bit more patience potentially, because the day is around you and not around the group and the group's needs necessarily. I think progression, as I said before, is something you'd see me do to help people's confidence. So if they wanted to go down a rapid that's pushing them a little bit, but they're a bit nervous and a bit unsure, I'd be like, well, let's break that rapid in two. Let's go from the middle to the bottom first, or depending on where the hard bit is, maybe we go from the top to the middle, something like that. And then let's throw in something different. Let's try and go down singing a song, or just paddling on the right hand side, or just again trying to be a little bit playful with it, so we can try and approach that in a different way to what we would do normally. I think sometimes people can be quite paralyzed by fear because they don't have many options of what to do with it. It's either I do go and paddle down it, or I don't because I'm scared of it. And again, that's probably really rational. People are trying to keep themselves safe. When you're scared, people are thinking, well, what if I get hurt? And that's totally valid. But if we can be a bit more playful with it, and we can try some different things, well, actually, maybe it doesn't matter if I miss my strokes because I've just been down there only using my right-hand side paddle blade, or I went through the final bit of it with my paddle in the air, for example. I wouldn't necessarily advocate people do that, but that could just be something we're playing around with. And once we start to realize that possibly it's not that problematic if we're a bit offline, or we're on the right instead of the left, or what if we do come down it backwards? Like, can we recover from that? And I think learning and exploring those things can be really, really helpful with being more confident in whatever it is we're trying to do. People are often looking for perfection, and actually the reality probably isn't that it's going to be perfect. So why not play around with the imperfections?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that again, we come back to the idea of play, and this is something that was emphasized to me, particularly, he spoke about some of the elite athletes that he had done psychology coaching with. And these were sometimes top football players, or could be tennis players. And sometimes they had what was the equivalent of the yips in golf, but in tennis and other sports. And sometimes that's the pressure of performing in front of everyone, but they're hyper overthinking everything. Fear of failure. But if you have fun with stuff, you said, okay, just go out and play. It might sound like you're, particularly for people who are trying to get perfect moves, the idea of going out and playing and just seeing what happens can seem a bit like, well, I'm not really focusing my practice here. But actually, as Matt said originally at the beginning of the podcast, you're allowing your body to do what it knows what to do without you interfering it, without you short-circuiting it with overthinking stuff. And I guess when you do that very well, you end up in that funny little thing called the flow state, I suppose. That ever elusive thing. But I wanted to bring us back around to freestyle again, because I think all of this comes kind of full circle.
End over end, if you will.
Yeah, end over end. Yes. And I think anyone who knows me knows that I bang on about freestyle, because I think, for me personally, taking up freestyle, even though I'm completely hopeless at it on a feature, I can't do blunts or even roundhouses or anything. I can get the occasional loop in the right feature, but I do a lot of practice on flat water, and I love it because I can just turn up at a place. But when I started doing that, God knows how many years ago, my roll got way better, and my confidence in that became way better. And when Emily started, she became way better, and her roll exponentially improved just messing around on a single feature here. So, if you name, and I'm going to bang on about this because I do bang on about this, if you name any single big name kayaker in the world right now, any top kayaker, whether it's Dane Jackson or Aniol Solsis, they all have a good foundation in freestyle, even if they don't really do it anymore. Aniol doesn't really, he does downriver stuff, but he doesn't really muck around in the playboat. But you got Adrian Matten, Bren was obviously, started in freestyle. Why isn't freestyle more popular given the benefits that it gives?
I think there are two elements to this. There is the element of not wanting to get your head wet. That's what I'm going to call it anyway, which I really sympathize with. I think about 5 years ago, I went through a transition where I got into full slice boats, and very slowly and gradually just completely gave up on doing anything that looked like I might get my head wet, and was just doing slicey things. And I thought, oh, this is nice. Maybe this is what it's like getting old. You just become that little bit more sedate and finesse based, rather than kind of explosive and poppy. And then I think perhaps about 6 months ago, I realized that I was just missing something, and have actually gone back to a modern freestyle boat and just love it. But I think there was that definite element of kind of like, oh, I'm just going to resign myself to a level rather than doing something that is sometimes a bit uncomfortable and does get you wet. And, getting my head wet is the symptom rather than the root of it, I suppose. I think hopefully you can get what I'm trying to say.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. I mean, I've seen a few people get a Nova as a replacement for a short boat, and they say, "Oh, you can do everything you can do in a normal playboat." And I'm thinking, how deep does the hole need to be able to leave that?
Yeah, I mean, well, it is true. It is definitely true, and I think my wave freestyle really improved having the Nova, for example, because if you can throw around a longboat, on a wave, you can definitely throw a shorter boat around. But having said that, there are things you miss because you're too long. So yeah, I think there's probably an element to it.
I think one of the problems that we've got with freestyle is when we call it freestyle, we're probably talking about short boats and moves on a specific feature, and that probably then gets people thinking about, well, does that move meet the ICF scoring criteria or not? And it for me, it's just really not about that. I mean, it might be about that for a lot of people, but not for the vast majority of people enjoying play in their boat. And I think when whitewater kayaking had an element of rodeo became playboating, whatever the real difference is. I'm never 100% sure. And then like playboating then became freestyle. It felt like it became more and more specialized. When I started boating, everybody basically had one boat, and the boat you had could kind of do a bit of everything. It probably didn't creek boat very well as such. You would only really have a creek boat if you were professional or American. That was the reasons to have a creek boat, really. And so everybody had a boat that you could kind of do a tailie in. And if you were good enough to paddle down the river in a more of a full size or a full type playboat, you could probably get away on a lot of different rivers with that sort of thing. Not necessarily with much safety for your legs, to be perfectly honest, but you could paddle it as your one boat. I think when boat design then moved on to boats being really, really specialized specifically for freestyle, I think there's a switch in what people wanted to then go and do. And also at the same time, modern creek and river boats becoming really, really good and really good at what they're able to do. So I think that means that there was almost like a fork in the road of, well, do you want to do more loops and more tricks and more feature specific play, or would you like to go down the river in a really cool, really smooth and really fast way? And I think a lot of people took a left turn there and went, you know what, the river stuff looks great. And of course, it's totally possible to do both. But I think the river stuff it certainly did for me, became really, really appealing. What I like, I say recently, I don't necessarily know how many years I'm talking now, but it feels still fairly recent, is that more and more people are getting into half slice and full slice type boats on rivers that maybe where you don't need a creek boat for, and you don't need all the safety features and the support necessarily. So I think that really is making a big comeback. Totally agree with what you say. A lot of if not all of the best paddlers have virtually got some kind of ability in playing freestyle, for sure. Or at least they seek out river play like activity.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed a lot of the downriver moves, like kick flips have a lot of similar sort of crossover aspects from things like the double pump and that sort of thing. And, the thing that I find fascinating is I've converted a few people into getting short boats or trying short boats. We have a fleet at the club here for anyone to try out if they're, not sure. And I do have, I have had a number of people over the years, including quite recently, people who have flat out refused to get in a short play boat and have a go at it. And then we've got them in the boat and they have a lot of fun because they realize that on the kinds of features that you have in the UK, where they're usually pretty small for the most part, unless you're going, unless you go down to some of the Thames weirs and that sort of thing, they realize that they can have a lot more fun in them than their big longboat because they can maneuver them much better. They can do a lot more with them. And now we've got people messing around with tailies on really shallow eddy lines and things. And, I see the progress in their general boating. They just become way more confident. So I think, I don't know whether it's some people don't want to get their head wet, and I can fully see that. And I know people who have avoided it for that very, very reason. The paradox being that often they want their role to become better. So, is it, there is that, but also is there an image problem? Given this ICF connection, I mean, I do find that whenever it comes up in conversation, I get people saying, as I was telling you before we started recording, that people say, well, I don't like watching people doing a loop in a hole or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, it's not about watching it. Just as I know lots of people who play cricket, but they don't actually like watching cricket because they actually find watching cricket boring. It's about doing it. It's about, having a go in it. I mean, what are your thoughts with it? Is it an image problem?
I wonder whether what Chris was saying just now about the wording and the definitions, kind of where you put the goalposts, is more of the issue than how it looks. Although how it looks definitely is tied to that. But having a definition of freestyle that encompasses having a playful attitude to the river, to the environment that you're in, irrespective of what exact moves you're doing, or for that matter, what boat you're in. You can be playful in a creek boat. It's just a mindset, isn't it? You know, you can chuck an end in a hole in a Greek boat and you'll still have an outcome.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of connected
And
to
that's still freestyle.
Yeah, I mean that's what happened this week. We had Matt Stevenson down at my club to do some tuition on our now actually quite good wave. It never used to be very good. You never used to be able to do anything on it, and now people are doing like roundhousey blunt things. Someone's started to get decent air loop going on it and retaining. But there was a guy there when we had Matt down in a creek boat. He told Matt, "I'm not. No, I don't do freestyle." And Matt was like, "Yeah, but you're surfing away. You're doing freestyle."
Yeah.
I bet Matt said that as he was back surfing next to the guy, just having a conversation, being really nice and relaxed.
It was sickening how smooth he was on this wave, you know, because it's a highly technical wave. You really have to keep moving around, and when Matt's on it, it just looks like it's a really, really consistent like feature that, you know, just no bother. Just amazing to see.
I think one of the challenges with freestyle is how it can feel sometimes for people, because the boats feel so different to what a creek boat does. And I know for me that a big part of whether I'm enjoying a boat specifically on the river is very much down to how it feels in the water. Like, does it feel fast, smooth? Does it feel like I've got kind of control of the edges? And sometimes a playboat on some rivers can just feel a bit clunky and a bit awkward. It feels like you're in a sort of high volume but super short thing that just goes left and right. Really, it doesn't always feel great. A longer boat, like just mentioned the Nova, can really change how it feels. And I feel like some of the recent boats, like Wacker's new boat, I know you've been in that recently, can probably really help bridge that gap between a riverboat or a half slice feels great on the river, and a playboat might feel really awkward. But something in between can kind of start to meet both needs almost. Yeah. And you still get that sensation. For me, kayaking and paddling generally is about how it feels in the water, and the sensation of the speed and the acceleration and the carving and the turning. If it doesn't feel great, I kind of get it when people say, I just don't like freestyle boats, because if they do feel really awkward because you've not given it enough time. And I think that's the thing. People do need to give it time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, with the half slices and full slices, you know, as well as the playboats. I know. I wonder if some kayakers think that something's unattainable because they see, you know, they'll see guys doing infinite alias in a half slice, and and doing rock splats in whatever. And I wonder if there's an aspect of feeling like, well, I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm not, you know, I'm just not going to be able to do that. That's a young person's game or whatever, you know. So in terms of perception, you know, do you think that's a factor as well? Perhaps unrealistically thinking that they can never attain those sorts of skills.
I mean, the standard's high, isn't it? They don't
have to attain those skills either. I mean, there's no mandate that they have to.
If you were to watch any top level freestyle competition, you would see an incredible ride that, like, for me personally, is way, way beyond where I could be without some really, really dedicated practice, and probably ever be anywhere near. But rewinding back some time, and it felt like what the pros were doing was not necessarily a million miles away from what everybody else was potentially able to do if you were good. But now the standard is incredible. It really, really is. And I do wonder if, when people think about freestyle, they're like, but there's no way I'll ever get to that. But it is okay to just enjoy paddling down the river. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do any tricks if you don't want to, but you probably could have a quick go at a spin pretty early on. You could get something with that. You could have a go at pushing one of the ends down, do a tailie, whatever it might be. I think people just need to be kind with themselves with their expectations at the start. Yeah. All of the top level freestyle paddlers have served a very long apprenticeship in getting to the level that they've got to.
Yeah, that's so true. I also think that people aren't helped by the kind of the bubbles that we choose to put ourselves in terms of social media or what we're viewing, what we're taking in. You know, it's very easy to have a feed that's full of this elite level. And as someone who produces stuff on the internet, I fully get the, oh, no one's going to want to watch that, it's a bit naff feeling when you're producing something, which then leads you to only put the good things on, or the good things, however, whatever that might be, the highlights. But also, if you've got a feed that's full of all of that elite level, and perhaps not so much at your peer level, and not only your peer level, but the people you actually paddle with, your friends, then what you're taking in is just feeding an unrealistic and probably quite, saddening, potentially, because comparison is a very unhealthy, it's a very, unhealthy thing, but it's also a very easy thing to do.
Yes. Yeah. And I think kayaking is quite unique in that, unlike a lot of sports, you can end up finding yourself in the same eddy as one of the top people in the world. And, you don't get that in a lot of sports. And I think that sort of feeds into that whole thing of, I guess, accessibility stroke feeling inadequate, maybe, because you see these social feeds of everyone else doing stuff. I know Del Reed had a really, really good blog about this sort of thing, and also the expectations that she felt placed on her from having a blog and having people know who she is. There's a lot of stuff that can feed into that sort of, I guess I'd call it a negative mindset. I don't know. Is that the right phrasing?
I think one of the other things that is really common with those elite level paddlers is the work ethic. I mean, that shouldn't go unsaid, that the reason they are really often really, really good is, of course, a combination of environment, access to facilities, the right people around them. But I can guarantee that that those top paddlers will be on the water first thing in the morning till last thing at night practicing. I've been quite fortunate to, a few times over the years, been at a competition or an event, same as some of the top paddlers, Dane Jackson, and he was doing way more time on the water than everybody else was doing. And it was only in that moment that I thought, and that's why you're one of the best, if not the best, because you are constantly practicing and you're refining what you're doing. It's not as if it's perfect every time. It looks perfect enough to me, but he goes back and he goes, I can make that better. And his work ethic is incredible.
Yeah,
I'd second that. When I went out and did the green race, I was there for 3 months solidly training every single day. And if I felt, a good day for me training, I might do 2 or 3 laps in the day. And on some of those laps, maybe I would walk up and session a couple of rapids. And I thought, I've done well here. And then the closer you got to race day, the more people were rolling into town, the more the more elite level people were coming in. And people like Dane, he's doing like 20 gorilla laps in a single lap so that he can really dial in that, the gorilla down to rapid transit, the final section. He just lap it and run back up with his boat. And you think, okay, yeah, exactly that. You're like, you are refining, and this is why you're the person that's going to be pushing the sub 4 time and no one else is.
Yeah. I mean, Dane's an absolute machine, isn't he? I mean, he really is. But I also like his humility because, he does post up his mistakes. He doesn't claim to be perfect. Whereas, a lot of guys, you never see the mistakes. I saw, what was it? An interview. I can't remember who's the American paddler. He does rap songs and stuff as well.
Rush Sturgis.
Rush Sturgis, that was it. And I saw an interesting interview with him once he was saying, there's quite a lot of stuff you don't see that happens on the river, and name no names, but one top paddler sort of swam on a very easy grade 3 section of river. That was probably some stupid mistake, but yeah, I like Dane because he doesn't claim to be perfect, and he shows that kind of side of things, and doesn't throw a hissy fit if he messes up in a competition. This is Argentina once. That was quite humorous.
But I think that also circles back to what you were saying earlier about the uniqueness of our sport, in that you can end up bumping into someone who is a very high level or, international elite level paddler in an eddy. And I think it can be really healthy to just sit and watch for a bit and to see, yes, it will undoubtedly look very smooth and, really put together, but you will see that it isn't perfect. And that probably is a healthy and, bolstering thing to do as well.
Yeah. And I think just to bring this full circle again, we've covered freestyle, and it's just reminded me of something else that comes up quite a lot in terms of improving your paddling. And it's something I think I agree with, and that is paddling with people who are better than you regularly. So you can observe them, you can see what they're doing, and, pick up things. Because I think sometimes if you are whatever level you are and you're paddling with people who are perhaps not as experienced or not as skilled as you, then you're always going to be the one who feels like, you're responsible or whatever. But I think definitely paddling with people who are much better than you is a good, a good thing to do for you.
Oh, absolutely. Like that's super healthy to do, I think. And as long as it's done in a supportive way, which, I think that's what we're talking about. It's really, really good, because when I do that, I feel like my perspective on what's possible is just broadened massively. You go down the river with somebody who is better than you and you're like, oh, I didn't realize there was an eddy there. I didn't realize you could stop there. I didn't realize you could surf that wave. Can't believe you've just kick flipped above that feature or that drop. I'd never do that because I'd go down upside down. And as soon as you start to do that sort of thing, you realize a bit more of what's possible. And it's great for opening your eyes to that. I totally recommend being on the water regularly with people who are either able to push you or are better than you, for sure.
Yeah. I had this myself a few weeks ago, actually, when I caught up with a certain Ross on the river, which I hadn't seen him for quite some time. Keep in touch with him, but I hadn't seen him on the water, and I hadn't paddled with him for a while, obviously. And just going down the upper T and seeing what he was doing on the upper T, because he runs it in a different way to pretty much everyone else who runs the upper T, and he was catching eddies in different ways that I hadn't seen before, and going down weird stream routes that I didn't realize were there. But it gave a new perspective, for me, and the way that he was approaching some of the drops, the angles he was taking, and the way that he was using his edges and strokes and carrying momentum. It was just stuff that I guess I was aware of, but you kind of, when you get set in a certain way and running a river in in the way that you always have done, it's very easy to get set in that mindset of just doing the same thing over and over again.
And you can easily get locked into avoiding stuff that you don't like as well. That's the thing for me. This is quite a specific example, but there's a rock on the Cheweran, and it once put a really bad gouge in my boat at the bottom of it, and the boat was pretty new. And every time I go towards it, I'm like, oh, if I land in that eddy now with too much speed on too much of an edge, it's going to tear the bottom of my boat apart. And of course it probably won't. It was just an unlucky moment. But I probably avoid the eddy more times than not now, just because of that kind of idea that, I'm just going to avoid it because I always avoid it, and that's okay. But actually, we should push ourselves to try some different stuff. And different people really help that happen.
Yeah. But also you can create that environment with your peer group of paddlers as well. Choosing to say, right, okay, well, let's have a game of kind of donkey, or whatever you want to call it. Someone sets a challenge and you're trying to make that challenge. Sometimes you might find that the person setting the challenge has set something that's just impossible for everybody, which is hilarious. But that it will naturally cause you to be testing and trying things that you wouldn't normally do, which can be really healthy. If you can find someone who's of a higher level than you, then hopefully that means that their sets are going to be that much more challenging as well, which is a good thing. But it's definitely something that you can engineer and do playfully as a peer group as well.
Okay, well, I think we've been over an hour. Amazing. But just under an hour. But that's been a really interesting conversation. Yeah, I thought just a bit of fun. I don't know if any of you have seen anything that's caught your eye this week that's been particularly silly or impressive in the outdoors, world of the outdoors at all.
Silly or impressive? I'm trying to think now.
Well, I'm a month behind on this. So this is my impressive thing. It's Huey Vaughan doing an amazing trick on a surfboard, and it happened about a month ago. I'm just old, and I don't see things as they happen. But here we go. Come on, London.
Are you kidding me?
Wow.
I thought that was pretty impressive.
That is impressive.
Unreal.
I bet he got his head wet a lot of times trying that.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they said Tony Hawk gave the trick its name. Stalefish Flipper, I think, was what it was called.
And you just reminded me now. It's not this isn't a recent video, but Tony Hawk, because you just mentioned him, going back and doing the 900 again. Like, is it 20 odd years, 25 years after he first did it? And the video, because I'm assuming you know what I'm on about here. Like the video of him at the X Games doing it for the first time, just incredible. Absolutely wild. Crowd goes crazy when he finally does it. And there's a resilience that's required for him to have one more go and one more go and one more go. And it's really inspiring watching it. But when you watch him try it again, having got some pretty serious injuries and being significantly older than he was, I think it's an even better thing to see. Yeah. Just seeing him do that for, well, it's not for the second time, but doing it for like, what could even be his last time? Who knows? Yeah. Again, after all that time, is just brilliant.
Yeah, I did see he did a video for a friend where he did his final 540 because he did a 540 and gave a skateboard to this guy, and it got stolen, I think. So he did a 540 for the last time, and then signed the board, I think, and gave him that board. So that's the last time I do a 540 for it on camera. So there's some great Tony Hawk stories. I think he's a great guy.
And there's an amazing video of Rodney Mullen doing some flat, do you call it flatland skateboarding? And it's just incredible. I find myself, as I get older, being more and more inspired by some of the older people who are still absolutely at the peak of their game and trying really hard and still out there doing it. They're not sort of easing into retirement. They're like, I still love skateboarding in this example and still want to get out and do it. And I'd really like to take that myself and be that passionate about paddling when I'm whatever age I might be, and just go, you know what? I'm still hitting the river. I'm still trying to get the eddy on the Chuaren.
Yeah, I think Jackie Chan's pretty inspiring for me in that result. He has a new film coming out and he's in his 70s and wow, he's so fast still. I just find the guy amazing at what he does. But yeah, okay. So yeah, I think it's amazing. We've got through an hour podcast on kayaking and we haven't discussed paddle lengths, offsets, boat hold.
And I think we can all be just so thankful for that, can't we?
Yes.
Yeah. But we all know the right answer, don't we?
Yeah. 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay.
No, brilliant. Thanks, guys. That's been amazing and a great discussion. And I hope everyone else listening has found this useful and found some tidbits they might be able to take on board. But no, thanks a lot, guys. That's been really good. So I will see you on the river sometime.
Thanks, Simon. See you soon.
What a pleasure.